Hola, hola. I'm Trek with two Ks,
And I am 3D, and welcome to Metaverses The Other Side.
brought to you here on the Gentleman of Crypto Network. Just a heads up, this episode is before we had the idea of bringing the Twitter spaces to the Gentleman of Crypto Network. And so that's why we're talking about the stuff that we're talking about in this episode.
Okay, so today we're just talking about metaverses, but we're not talking about price talk. We're not talking that type of stuff. We are talking a little bit differently here. We're going to be talking about tools, metaverses themselves. Just going into a real talk about stuff that is going on like right now. Let's start with metaverses themselves. So we've had a handful of places kind of pop up, spring up, and expand out on pretty much what's already here. So I think that's just something nice to think about is that they haven't changed dramatically in the past, 5, 6 months. And if anything, they have condensed some, in my perspective. Like they've kind of condensed what's going on in each metaverse, um, and stuff that's been, more metaversal type standards. Can we play games? What kind of games? Are we more in the social part? Can we bring stuff in? Can we put on a screen? Get achievements? So all these things are one of the main factors of what you know. Oh, what's the word for? Yeah, it's like the what people kind of expect from their metaverse. The ideal of it is kind of condensing to where it's like, for me to go into a metaverse, it's got to have one of like three major properties, and then depending on what type of metaverse someone's looking for, we determine what three properties were actually there. So one of the major properties that I think is really important here is some form of market functionality, buying, selling, or even just like purchasing, using, and giving. And then another metric that I feel like a lot of people thinks it's very important is social interactions, some sort of social connectivity between um, player A, player C, player D, like all the different players, and then the third property is going to be more like, is it entertaining? Not really, is it enjoyable or is it fun? Is it entertaining? That's the last property that seems to be across everybody's things. So like last week we got a lot of people coming in. Well, we got some people came in and we just talked and talked and talked. Um, and got a lot of people's perspective on what they think metaverses are. And that's where we get these three major properties from. Some form of purchasing interaction, whether it's directly to get in, directly in the game, directly with it, or some kind of tokenomics behind it, is kind of important. The ability just to obtain or get rid of items in that same manner is kind of important. Being able to talk with others is kind of important. And then being entertained, another importancy. So we're seeing all those things. Everyone's condensing down to those. So stuff before we had like, oh, there's this metaverse for da 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 da. That kind of hype has kind of gone down, and it's more social gathering metaverses, building up metaverses, able to sell things metaverses, personal spaces, things like that. And so more stuff is being built in towards that direction. So like, something they revealed at CES is that there is companies, that are able to actually allow you to touch things in the metaverse where there's actually haptic feedback response in the gloves based on digital signals about what's going on, whatnot. So now VTubers can actually feel themselves pick up that item they just picked up in their stream. Also, you'd be able to feel the gun trigger. They'd be able to actually code in response pooling, timing, pressuring, which could then affect your ability to play as it becomes more realistic, right? And I think that's something a lot of people, like right now, what he does is kind of rudimentary, but like what that technology is going to be able to do in the next 5 years is going to be unbelievable. It's going to be as if you were actually doing the object item or whatever. And getting a little bit closer to that reality where people go driving for people, but they're just the AI that is driving the car, basically. They're not, so it's not really an AI, it's a person, and they're just in a suit driving, and everyone says it's AI. And so those kinds of things are coming to be more realistic. Another thing that was released or introduced, being able to smell in the metaverse. Now, I know that there's been, I think a couple years ago, maybe 3 years ago, someone came up with a artificial nose. I think they came up with the idea in 2019, and I think it actually became a thing in 2020 or 2021. And it actually does identify smells. So the ideal here is reversing that. Okay, so they're saying they're going to be able to have something. The first, I think one of the ones that was introduced is like various different pheromones. So it's a machine that has various different pheromones, and it mixes them in a precise order and mixture, and then blows it out with a fan or something to the user, to allow you to have sense of smell. And there have been other ways people have kind of faked being able to smell things and being able to taste things. Like there's artificial taste buds and stuff like that has existed, and artificial ears exist, where we can like get measurements and stuff like that off of it. So now people are like really taking these different things that are already in existence and really figuring out how to use them in different ways. And Metaverse is one of those things that's going to take that very first cut of the pie where they're getting something real quick out of it. It does seem like lately in the news, metaversal tokens or tokens for metaverses have actually been outperforming Bitcoin, even though Bitcoin's been upticking. And at the same time, though, I think Meta and someone else, they're losing billions in the metaverse. And so this really shows that when your core of your metaverse is taking care of those three main principles, you know, obtaining and releasing items in some form, fashion, like purchasing, socializing with other people, and being entertained, they're really, they're winning. And so when we see people like Meta, I mean, drop down, dip down, it's like 4 billion, I think they said already, or since they started going into metaverses or something like that. And with that shows like some of their factors are way too high for what the other two outputs. So their price factor, what it costs to get in, is way too high for the amount of entertainment you actually get out of it and the amount of socializing you get out of it. Neither one of those are high enough. And so they need to work on making those costs lower to get people in. Like, for example, we've seen people go from Minecraft to Minetest because Minetest is free. Legitimately, that's the main reason why people are doing it. It's open source, it's free, and it's Minecraft similar. And you can also do all of the stuff that you wanting to do. Like well, when I say that, I do mean like you can mix in your NFTs with it. You can mix up currency with it and a bunch of other things. And you can really take advantage of the systems that are in the Minecraft world, so to speak. So, it's just it's just a different platform. It's easier to get in. And so people are taking advantage of stuff like that. They're taking advantage of these options that are cheaper, easier, and frankly, more entertaining compared to the more expensive options. And they're really starting to win. Like we're starting to see Sandbox and Decentraland kind of go down. People are kind of getting tired of Sandbox early reveals and never outputting or taking forever to be able to use anything or having to wait for the next season. So everyone's getting kind of tired of that. And Decentraland, it's more ghost towny than anything. I mean, it's true. There's still some dedicated players, some dedicated streamers. and they have friends that they know are going to be in there during times they're going to be in there. So that's what's been helping them out. So that socializing part's been really what's helping out Decentraland right now. Well, there are long periods of time where I see nothing but negative about Sandbox, and even though Sandbox will be going upward, and so people are really using that speculation to help them maintain want in it because because of everything that's going on. We saw a few new blockchains say that they're going to bring on some form of metaversal systems for their chains, and that's something that I don't think anyone ever really talks about. I personally, I don't see any point to it. Like when you have people saying stuff like putting metaversal stuff in our blockchain, it's a bit weird, especially since like your blockchain doesn't really need metaversal anything unless your blockchain has native inbound storage sharing or some form of torrent transfer or something like that internally. You don't really need anything because a lot of the stuff that is metaverse related, it's not actually built on the blockchain. You can store that stuff on the blockchain, store the assets, store the items, store the code, but it doesn't actually use the blockchain in that manner. Like most times metaverses, the stuff that require blockchain anything is a purchase or a sell of stuff. And so there are some blockchain or some metaverses where we see it's a non-blockchain metaverse using blockchain as a tactic for selling, which inside of it, so people can put up their NFTs or their whatever, and you can purchase the items using Ethereum on most times. So we're starting to see basically more of a need for that kind of stuff. There are bigger companies like NVIDIA has their metaversal system. They have a system they're pulling out. We're seeing AI. I can't remember which company it is. There's a company that's doing an AI integration for quick building backgrounds on and scenes. And so we're going to have even like 3D modeling systems and stuff like that, and game building systems that they're going to be able to integrate backgrounds and stuff. And we're going to have maybe planar backgrounds in some cases, but we could take another AI, have an AI build a really nice plain 2D, flat basically background. We can have another AI add in depth to that background based on the color pixelation. And then another AI can go in and edit over all of that and put in filters and make it look more lively. And we would never know the difference. Then we can have AI handle bit mapping and then triggering and yeah. So it's not it's a climb here, climb there, climb there, big slope, big slope, big slope. But it's one of those eventual moves that just get you onto a point where it's like, okay, VR metaverses are less likely to survive compared to standard metaverses, but I mean they're gonna stick around. It's just the 3D metaverses, the non-AR VR ones, they're gonna definitely get a lot more fun and like a lot more different. So like when I know a lot of people when ARs were coming out, people were like, oh yeah, I would imagine the world around you being your metaverse background drop. And it's like a lot of the systems, just like it's kind of disjointed more than anything. It's more for show. There have been a handful of games and stuff that have come out that are fun, but for the most part, it's a pain in the ass for people to work with to get the AR to work, no matter what device you're using. And all the devices people talking about, the goggles and all these different things, they end up mostly just being broken, not really that working well, and so we haven't. So all this stuff that the AR hype kind of gave, we very quickly realized they were just a push to get you in big headset VR, and maybe some marketing. But now we're seeing people they're realizing that the 3D it's just better having a 2D interface and a 3D interface. It's just better. That handles. Now you have people that can Now you basically you can do VR, AR, 3D, 2D. So any kind of environment, whether you have the headset on, whether you're using AR with your phone, or either on a computer or cell phone standard. So the people realizing that that's like a much better way to go. And I think it is too, because it just kind of hits all the marks on the head. And so some of the big metaverses that we see, like in the metaverse with Toolbox, like spatial and on cyber, we're starting to see them offer more things. Not really like huge differences for like individual like builders, but for individuals in the metaverse, we're seeing major differences, major upgrades to keep them wanting to be entertained more while they're there. And that's cool. That's one of the principles you got to work at, right? And then we have like a similar studio who's just adding in more features and get more stuff set up and ready for basically expanding even more of what they're going to be doing. And then you got like hubs, Studio 7.1. So some of these are like they're really maybe not offering brand new features or state-of-the-art technologies, but they're offering more stuff to make the experience more enjoyable. And that's a good sign. That shows that they're understanding what's cutting people out, what's getting people off. People are understanding, yeah, a headset with a 2-hour battery life, that's kind of clunky and causes you to run into stuff. Maybe not the best experience. And so they're finding ways to get people back onto the computer, basically. They want you face in front of a screen because they can keep you there a lot longer. In a lot of cases, you're going to have a lot more fun. You know, you're going to be able to do streaming and stuff while you're doing it. And you're not going to have anything extra on you. It's just where you're at, what you're doing. And I know like we saw someone cut out of a big metaverse deal. And then that same metaverse just turned around and made a bunch of small deals right immediately after that, 'cause they had opening that space. Guaranteed space for stuff. And so they just immediately went through and started selling. And so what we're seeing is even when big companies are like, they check out, they're done with the metaverse market. We see the metaverse market itself take up the slack of those big entities dropping out. And I think that's kind of important. That shows that the metaverse market itself is getting resilience, it's getting stability upon itself because of some of the better metaverses that are out there. Their demand is keeping people going. And I know this is a little bit wish-washy, but it's still true because people are getting tired of waiting for rounds on some metaverses, but it has been causing them to like just move to other metaverses during off seasons. And so I'm starting to see patterns where some metaverses kind of get quiet while other metaverses are running. And then when those seasons are done, the ones that got quiet will get loud again, more people come back. So I'm noticing that as well as more personal events, more private made stuff, more or less corporational stuff going on. And that's always a good sign. That means that the communities really see a point to it, even because it might not be the best thing for all businesses. But it's definitely a good tactic for some businesses. And that's where we're starting to really see a divide in determining like which is kind of businesses are going to be good for metaversal marketing, metaversal ads, being in the metaverse itself, having a metaverse itself, or just owning some of the stock or coins or something of that metaverse. So, and then like with the progression of metaverses, we have been seeing what we would say new types of metaverses have emerged over the years, or just a few years. So we are seeing where it's like before taking on what we would call a metaverse would be a big deal. Now there's rooms, metaversal rooms, spaces, kind of like what we're doing right now, podcast room sizes, small little rooms that you can host gatherings and stuff like that. And people are finding that those are probably more handy than some of these really big ones. And we are still looking at 3D as a main source still for metaverses. So people really like the ideal of there being that spatial physical space or seemingly physical space. And that was also something like last week that we did hear from people. They were saying, I think there's one or two people that were saying something about a metaverse needs to have a spatial space or an ability to move around. And it's a bit strange because like when websites first came out, we did have this strange thing where it was like all websites were just all you could do was scroll down. And then we started seeing tab websites, div-laid websites, table websites. And there was a point in time I remember people were saying, if you're going to have a website in the new age, you've got to have one that makes people move around, keeps them interested. Around the same time frame, like big box stores like Walmart and stuff, they were doing stuff where they would like move everything in the store every 2 weeks. So like maybe not everything at the same time, but they'll move stuff in one area, and then 2 weeks later they move stuff in different areas. So what they do is they move stuff around constantly throughout the whole year, and they do it every 2 weeks. So it's not so often that it's noticeable, but at the same time, if you're paying attention, like every so often you'll go into one of these big box stores and you go, oh, I can't find something. It used to be over here, but now it's not. And that's starting to happen more and more and more. And because I remember at one point, it used to be something like once a month or twice a month. Now it's every 2 weeks. I think some places are doing it faster than that, based on the size of the store. So small stores you can probably do a little bit quicker, or bigger stores can do it quicker. I'm not sure which, but we're starting to see these techniques being used in other places, even with like communities within metaverses, where it's like instead of it being like, okay, we're all in the same spot, same place, same day, every day or whatever. It's not like, oh, well, today we're going to be in Metaverse A. Tomorrow we'll be in Metaverse B, then Metaverse C. And so we're starting to see this combination of where, like, how the metaverses are marketing to the players and how the players are playing them. Like, ones that are real big in metaverses, they're on every day or something. They're changing it up. They're moving around. They're not staying in the same spot anymore. And businesses working in metaverses, we're starting to see basically the same thing, where it's like they're not always in a metaverse. They're not always taking on the big launch of a metaverse. They might just be advertising in this metaverse for a while, or advertising alongside that metaverse, or doing a partnership to get advertisement with a metaverse. So we're just starting to see the age of progression. They're able to move around, they're able to be entertained, they're able to talk, interact, socialize, not be alone, and they're able to do things that they probably couldn't do in real life, or they're able to go to places they probably couldn't go in real life, or so they're able to meet these needs of demand. They're able to experience things they probably can't any other way, or potentially couldn't any other way, and they're able to have experiences that they're not normally able to obtain. So metaverses have really come a long way. Hold on 1 second. I'm going to take a quick hit, and then we're going to talk about, because I could have sworn that I've seen like a text metaverse. And I knew someone who was trying to work on something like this. They were trying to build a text-based metaverse. See if I can find it real fast. No, all I'm getting is people asking what is a metaverse. I still find it strange that there are people still asking that question to this day. They're like, what is a metaverse? And I do find it strange that like 6 months ago they were talking about, and metaverses were actually doing this, like they were paying people to just stand around, and like answer questions, doodle, things like that. And then they were like, yeah, so AI is going to do it. And it was like right after the first metaverse did that, they actually implemented an AI NPC using ChatGPT. ChatGPT, like a couple days later, turned their pay system. Now they were talking about around the same time from that first initially happened. They were talking about adding in a pay wall system where they were like, we're going to raise the price. We're gonna, there'll still be a free version, but to get use whenever you need it, if you're going to use it for doing something with, you got to have this other one. And yeah, I was just basically like, yep, they're cashing in on metaverses right there. And I don't see anything wrong with that. I think it's actually a smart deal to do. We're starting to see that more often where it's like, yeah, you can use it, but if you just want unlimited use or you just want high output use or whatever, high input use, yeah, pay for that shit, bro. And I think that's more of a better model to see in businesses nowadays where it's like, yeah, sure, there's a free model, but you want the full whatever, let's put a little bit of money on the table. That's a whole lot better than like paying per month and all this other stuff, or you're like paying for like 14 years or 20 years for Netflix, so you don't have to have ads. First you're getting DVDs, then no longer after that you're only getting digital stuff, and then now you're getting ads on your digital unless you pay more and more and more and more. And it's like I remember a time where Netflix was like $4.99. I used to get Netflix digital only for $7.99 on original Xbox 360. So it's like, what happened? They changed up their models, and I think if anyone's going to be changing up their models, Metaverses is the next one to do it. We've been seeing it happen everywhere, and there's a lot of free Metaverses out there. So I do think we're going to see more of them offering pay options, and then that's going to bring in paywalls, and then we're going to eventually have a point where it's like the number of actual free metaverses will be real low. And they'll have stuff where it's like, if you want to build in it, it costs, and then it's free to play. That keeps you still in the free market while able to obtain money. So then it's a matter of like your ability to hold eyes per minute plus the ability to obtain eyes per day will be the difference in if you make it or not. Kind of like what we're seeing with paid social media systems. There's a bunch of them out there where you have to pay to get into them. And we're seeing the exact same thing. Dating sites, all these other things, where the ones surviving are the ones that they're just kind of meeting the bare minimum best of both worlds, where they're basically able to give people that entertainment and that socializing aspect to where they're willing to stick with it, rather it's more reliable or less BS, less spam or something like that. But at the same time, though, there's still tons dead accounts. Probably a large portion of their server data is just dead accounts, and the traffic, it fluctuates quite heavily, making even ad systems unreliable. And yeah, it gets kind of messed up to where you go like, we're doing this because it's reliable, and then just not being able to get the eyes every day or keep the eyes in per minute. Well, it's no longer reliable. So I've been going up and down the news throughout this whole thing while we were doing this, and Meta is still saying stuff like metaverses will be as important as the smartphone, while they're still losing nearly $14 billion, so 13 plus billion dollars, and they're pivoting their metaverse everything right now. I think that's probably one of the top news points right there, is that one of the biggest metaverses is oh, Shrek, didn't even see you in there, bro. So just sent you an invite. Sorry about that. I did not see it. But we're seeing like one of the biggest ones fall. They're losing tons of money and tons of money. While we're seeing some of these really small ones, they're picking up the slack. They're really definitely going in and increasing value like crazy, picking up the slack that, Meta is dropping. So there's some McKinsey report that said metaverses are probably going to exponentially increase over the years. Yeah, Rosa. I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, so I had to drop the Bluetooth, but yeah, I wanted to jump in early to try to hear what you're saying from the top, but it is what it is right now. But yeah, it is definitely a number of things that are kind of just coming out in the news. I heard about the Facebook thing earlier with how much money he was losing or has lost so far, quote, versus how he's looking at it for what it would mean long run. The other thing to note, I think that relates to metaverses, but no one's really seeing the connection just yet, because the argument is generally being framed around NFTs and that technology used as visual or audio content. And as we know right now, metaverses have a huge potential for how the video and audio content, as well as just like items and skins, will be applied in arguably a definitely future and growing market. But the patent office the other day had what they called a public forum where they had a bunch of different panels, and they had a shit ton of lawyers on there, bro, like a shit ton. And the basic thing was, the conversation was around how does copyright work with NFTs? And honestly, it was probably only a handful of people that actually got and actually made the point to say, like, listen, this market is not the traditional market in how you have a top-down model of the companies, of the brands dictating how and why and what and when and where a creator as well as a consumer of that content is able to interact, store, use, and engage with content. A lot of the lawyers were arguing basically that like copyright law is good as it is. It has the effect that it should have for being able to control like IP and trademark and branding. And only one person who I know, Professor Tanya Evans, she brought up the whole thing about like, what's the thing? Generational wealth, like building generational wealth off of copyrights, right? If your family had a copyright on something, what would that end up turning out to be over time? Like if a platform end up, let's say, going down, how does it then work that if you had the copyright of that document on a blockchain, what does that mean? And it was really some lawyers who were on there talking who just had no real understanding or grasp of how the technology worked. And it was a lot of lawyers who were arguing a position of what was in favor of the traditional industry model. If anybody's interested, at some point you can check out the Copyright Office's website. There's a section on the website that deals with that is supposed to house all the recordings of the panel discussions that they had about copyright law. And so if you're interested, you can definitely go and check that out. You'll find it's a handful of people between the number of panels that they had who actually understood the tech and where the law were at a mismatch, and where the industry was still trying to hold on to its power position, it still is able to make money position. I will say the other thing that kind of surprised me is some people were sideways arguing against free market, and a number of the more company related positions like Filecoin. You said something before, bro, that it reminded me of what the person from Filecoin said. So I didn't catch the beginning part of what you said about the storage, but they're basically, or at least the person, and what I think I understood about what they were saying was that they are working for a way to be able to block content at the browser level. So traditionally within this copyright stuff, IP stuff, when it comes to a website hosting something, you send a desist and cease letter to them to take down the content. Some people who understood the tech a little bit more were like, well, how does that make sense in decentralized storage? And so apparently IPFS does have a takedown procedure. How effective it is a whole different story. The gentleman from, I forgot what marketplace he's from, but he really called it out. He was just like, you guys send these letters out and they're only band-aids and they're not even effective as like actually taking down the content. But to the point of what Filecoin was talking about was they're looking at a way to be able to block content at the browser level. So even if you have it, stored in a decentralized manner, it will still be blockable at the browser level. So they'll send the blacklisted like hash the CIDs to the browser, and then that way you wouldn't have access to it, or it'd be like easier to trace down like where something moved if it was like a stolen PFP or NFT or some kind of thing. I really don't think folks have even, I don't know, let me not say that. I don't think enough of the people who are in the space right now who are about like community policing, open source technologies, decentralization, digital and economic sovereignty in real world as well as online. I don't think folks are getting like, there's a conversation that is being had in multiple different departments within the American government as well as other governments. And that was the other thing that kind of annoyed me as I was listening to this set of panels that the Copyright Office was hosting. This was 2 days ago, is that it was heavy in the American context. So it's like, hey, how are we going to work this in our markets? How are we going to do blah, blah, blah? And they talked about it in this general way with no real acknowledgement of, if the technology is global, what does it mean if we make up these rules and the other countries don't follow the same set, or they don't use the same underlying blockchain for a particular thing? And like I said, it was a number of folks from the Copyright Office side, as well as the industry lawyers. It was also some people who were creatives and stuff like that. This one lady, Vicky, I think her last name is Newman. I might be saying the last name wrong. She was spot on with what she was saying. She was really driving home the point of like, if we're really saying this is about putting the power in the creator's hands, it doesn't work for the model and for the legality, or it doesn't work for how a number of the traditional players are trying to argue that they want the revenue and the business models to be. They don't want it to actually be in full control for the creator. They want to still be the middle person, which is the thing that gets me. And I think folks don't see where this connects to metaverses, because metaverses arguably are like the macro of a digital experience space, while NFTs are more the micro thing. They're the items that can be within, metaversal spaces and that make up metaversal experiences, as far as like having skins or being able to have music or being able to see artwork on, virtual digital walls, as well as even the AR side of it, because that's definitely going to be another whole set of things to kind of hash out on where does the law need to catch up with what's going on, and then how many of us are out here actually fighting and creating and pushing the stuff that works to really put the technical control in creators' hands, in the consumers' hands, versus what, to me, it seems like a number of the people are still in regulatory and big business arguing that they want to make sure there's still the middle person. Other thing to note is that the Biden administration, when he did the executive order, I initially thought it was about like the Department of Justice, FinCEN, CFTF, Seek. I initially thought it was about those departments and like them getting the signal to start like, making sure they carve out their regulatory lane within this whole crypto thing. And after listening to the Copyright Office thing, I realized it's not just the main big known bodies. It's the other smaller departments that no one really pays attention to. And this is going to affect into the metaverse space. And when it does, a lot of the folks who didn't think anything of it are going to get smacked in the face really hard, in my opinion. But I'm sorry, I'm rambling, and I had to just throw that in there. A lot of things have happened.
Yeah, absolutely. Earlier I was talking about how the metaverses have been condensing down to handling 3 major properties, and the types of metaverses we have will determine what kind of properties will be the demand. And I think that's reason for a lot of fall in some areas like Meta, for example. Their metaverse is not that great, and the experience and the socializing, there's not a whole lot of people on there, so it's real low. So they don't. That's why they've been failing, while other ones are able to keep those marks up and they keep people in. When you had said something that I didn't even think about, like I do think that there needs to be completely separated laws just for digitalization in general, because the longer we let the main old systems stay in power in the middle of everything, the harder it's going to get for anything to evolve out of something. And I kind of wish they would just like not mess with it and just, don't fuck with it or whatever. Just leave it alone. A lot of people will be upset about that, I'm sure, because then they couldn't get their extra cut, or they couldn't ensure they get a cut, or they couldn't get their money back if something happens. But I think those are the kinds of things that are really needed right now. The government needs to just butt out and let us do our thing. But at the same time, like, oh dang, now I can't remember what it was. You had said something, and I was like, damn, that's a really good point. You were talking about
the NFTs as a micro and the metaverse as the macro.
Yeah. Because the metaverses don't need the NFTs, and the NFTs don't need the metaverses. They work well together, though, right? So I think that in general, metaverses are more flexible in the technology form of cryptocurrencies, crypto systems, networks, compared to like actual like networks for cryptocurrencies and stuff. But you were also talking about gosh, I had it on my head there a second ago. Dang, I completely forgot. It wasn't the macro. It was something else. Dang, I completely lost it.
The lawyer position as far as the industry and stuff, because it was a couple of lawyers from like the music industry. It was a lawyer from the motion picture industry. There's another lawyer from that, like, I don't think it was the Actors Guild, but it was something related to actors in one of the panels. It was what's his name from Dapper Labs was there, the CEO, I forget his name at the moment. So yeah, I said a number of things, my bad, bro.
No, it's all good. It wasn't the lawyer thing. But I was like, it's going to affect the flow of creation of metaverses. The thing, can't believe we got it twice. But it's all good. Yeah, the potential here is quite large, right? No matter how you look at it, for what they're being used for or usable for. And I think the laws are really going to only like either push some people out from refusing to get in, and that's really about it. It won't push a whole lot of people. I think it will probably leave more room for businesses to take advantage of these things. Everybody, every company and their sister is going to have a metaverse for every little action possible, and then it'll be weird. But what might come from that kind of drive or that kind of flood of activities, entertainment, what systems will die because of that, you know? Because, oh, you were talking about the video and audio, possibilities out of metaverses. It's like, how many companies that are dying lately, past 3 years, that were thriving 3 years before that for like sharing videos, sharing audio, like a lot of them have died out, and that's, at the same time, while a lot of metaverses that had, like screen capture, share, and things like that, that's the reason why I think that people are finding uses that metaverses have that were never intended, but because it is good at transferring audio and video and these simultaneously and keep them synced, people are like, hey, it's like, instead of going to see a show, how about we just go see it in a metaverse?
Oh, okay, sorry. Yeah, some people had brought that up about like the whole, the dynamic is changing for the creator and for the user as far as you have what the industry wants, and the industry wants the people and the creators to do things a certain way, but they're not acknowledging that, no, they're coming up with whole new setups because of what the technology can do. And so there was another kind of conversation that was basically around like limiting what the technology can do, but they wouldn't blatantly say it though. And they wouldn't blatantly say like, well, yes, this is about keeping the motion picture industry still in the position it's in. This is about keeping the music industry still in the position it's in. Like, they wouldn't say it directly, but if you were parsing through and, putting together what X amount of them were saying, you could tell like, all right, you're arguing for the middleman to stay being the middleman between the creator and the consumer. Other thing, housekeeping, and I gotta run, bro, and finish out this night. If you don't know, this is a Builder DAO Twitter Spaces, and we do this thing called Metaverses the Other Side, which happens every Thursday night, 8 p.m. on the East Coast. And we also do the restream on Fridays on the Gentleman of Crypto YouTube channel. That comes on at 11 p.m. We're not just tourists in this thing. So like hashtag we're not tourists, aka we ain't grifters about this. We are working on stuff. We are going through the trial and error of building and like breaking things. So one of the things that we did build, 3D did the heavy lifting on it, is the Metaversal website. I believe you might have talked about that in the beginning, where it's basically tools and resources that you can use to build stuff, from smart contracts to NFTs within a metaverse, primarily in the EVM ecosystem. But some of the things have changed, and I know he brought that up earlier. Other thing to note is what we want to start doing is telling people about, hey, if you have an IPFS node, please, add in the Metaversal Toolbox website to your IPFS node, so that the access and this information and this resource can be available to other folks who are also interested in looking to learn and as well build within Metaversal spaces using open source tools, which was the primary idea behind putting together the Metaversal Toolbox and putting it on IPFS. The idea of, there are open source tools out here that can work. It's just you got to put in the time to understand how they work and then experiment with what they can do. What is the other thing? There's something else I had wanted to say and I totally forgot at the moment, but I just wanted to do that housekeeping and then get out of here. And just want to say I'm looking forward to listening to this later on, to see what you had talked about in the beginning, bro. So good job, man. And what is that? Amina, you, thanks for coming through. We appreciate it.
Absolutely, bro. So go take care of what we got to take care of. I did remember what I forgot earlier, and it was so you can hear this when you come listen to the replay. Blocking things in the browser level. So past like 6 years, we've seen browsers play around with like auto beautification, being able to remove ads, pick and pull specific things. Like there's even a browser plugin that will allow you to remove all existence of specific celebrities. So we've been seeing people play with it, but saying that people are now trying to get it to a better level or whatever, there is this thing in IPFS that's kind of recent, is a notification system, and they call it the blog. They call it the IPFS blog system. So that's what it's intended for. It's like you can write something, and then people can kind of attach stuff to it, and it's anyone who's hosting, I think the file gets alerted by it. I forget how the alerts work, but it allows you to have an alert system with an IPFS, and it allows you to be able to have like one object that is searchable for other things, or other things can be searchable in relation to this object. And that allows for like protocol level commenting of things. And if they're able to go in and, I don't know, and attach a blog point to that original CID, that would just be a tag. And that tag, whenever that CID gets loaded in, would come in as like question mark. It'd be the CID, it'd be all the information, your gateway, IPFS or IPNS, your CID or your bin site, and then it'd be question mark, and then it would be tag equals, and then some information. And so if your tag equal to specific whatever, it could never load it. It could do this, say, oh, I can't load this, skip, and just keep going. Like, I'm pretty sure they're going to be using something like that to do it at a protocol level, where it would be the browser just has to support IPFS, and this would be doable in a decentralized way. Then the browser itself would then have to work around that system. It'd have to basically do the accepting or denying of those objects, and it could even have its own separate listing. So then it has to be, the object has to be on both lists. So they could even have like a dual band blocking system. So you can block it either way or both. So they could call that a privacy measure, protecting measure, and things like that. Because there are virus CIDs, there are malware CIDs, there are there are real reasons to have to do this. But at the same time, that's somewhere along the lines of what I think they call it brown bagging back in the day. Like back when I first started coding, I think they called it brown bagging. And what it is it's a on the fly list that can be changed, modified, skewed, pulled from, and adjusted in a server side manner. So basically, if I was hosting servers and stuff like that, I'd have a communication server to sync, do all my syncing. That server could have this system, and it could tag certain things on the server, so it would know certain things. And I'm just basically saying that type of tag system, it's a list inside that server. They would call it brown bagging, and it's something that can be changed on the fly. And one of the things that people used to do is they would do something to interact with that list to get them on a whitelist to use the server, or to bypass something would be commonly more known as brown box, which is where it's makes some signal sounds, and you put it next to a payphone, and it would get you a free brown box. Would have been long distance phone call. So it would just bypass whatever measure they were using to count if you paid. While I think Redbox, it was free local calls, so you could pick up the phone, play a Redbox sound, and then get a free call. But it's kind of, I don't know, it's gonna change everything, because if you can change stuff on those levels that easily, that quickly, you can kind of force the hand of what people see. And that's going to increase the need for more open source, more free and open source systems, more community controlled networks, systems, and whatnot, which then Metaverse is already in line to that a measure. So I think we're going in the right direction, so to speak, for good reasons that might help us out later on. Thank you again, and NMAU, for jumping in, joining us. Anybody else who listens to the replay, I appreciate it. Go ahead and hit that like, subscribe, and enjoy your day. If you're on Twitter, retweet this out. Join us and watch us on BuilderDAO. People who host this, we host this space every Thursday, 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 Central, USA. So if you want to catch us next week, go ahead. Next week, we're going to be talking about the, I think it was a life of artificial intelligence, or hold on, I got to look it up. Something of artificial intelligence, life of artificial intelligence, love of artificial intelligence. Let's see. It's a picture. Hold on, drive. I'm going to the pictures. I'm not seeing it. I think it's Life of Artificial Intelligence. It's a documentary about people meeting and communicating in VR chat. And we use a free resource online to be able to watch a lot of this stuff. So we will be posting a thing later, probably tomorrow, and including will come a comment about where you can watch the video, which will have the link basically. So if you don't know what I'm talking about now, well, it'll be on Twitter. Just jump on, find it, and keep up to date with us by clicking the bell. I think that's what it is, on Twitter and on YouTube as we come out. Everybody have a great day. Hope to see you next week.